Hello viewers, welcome again to my YouTube channel, which is titled or which has been called the Inside Geography with Saad Rahoojo. Today I'm again with another lecture, which is from the geography, physical geography particularly, and geomorphology. This particular topic, which I'm going to discuss with you today, is very important. As I've been saying that most of the topics of geography are so important, but this topic, which we just discussed today, very seriously is very important and the core of geography, particularly physical geography. So if you want to understand the certain geological processes and the changes which are being happening on the surface of Earth or inside the outside of surface of Earth, and also what are the real process of landform formations, because you are being seeing lots of things outside the surface of Earth and inside of surface of Earth. So the changes are, you can say, the different features, landform, which are being you are being seen or observing by your own eyes. They have a certain process behind them. So in this particular topic, we'll discuss all about these processes, or you can say the factors or the agents. So without wasting our time, let's go to the lecture. So today's topic is weathering. Weathering is very important, very, I'll say it is a as I told you before, it's a core in geography, because as a geographer, being a student of geography or the geographer, you can say, you are being mostly concerned to the change on the surface of Earth. You see lots of variations, variation on the surface of Earth, or the different features, landscapes. So what are the reasons behind that change, or what are the forces behind these changes? So this particular topic, which is called the weathering, it's going to address these all issues or these all questions. So stay tuned with me, and this lecture could be a bit lengthier, so be patient with me. I hope you will get benefit from this lecture. So go to the slides and let's start. So this topic, as I told you, is concerned as being part of the geomorphology. So students who are being, who has opted the subject of geomorphology, or who've been learning the geomorphology, this is going to be very interesting for them. So geomorphology is a part of physical geography. So in this lecture, we will discuss the weathering. Before going to the weathering, its definition, introduction, and background, let me clear that it's sometimes the student being confused. They use the weathering parallelly with the term weather. So it has nothing to do with the weather, which is being part of climate. Means it's nothing to do with the climate. So this is a different term. So we'll see what does that means. What does mean by the weathering? So it is nothing to do with the weathering, with the climate, or temperature, pressure, humidity you have been talking about. So nothing there. Now comes the table of contents. What do we learn in this? So we'll discuss the definition, then types of weathering. In types of weathering, we will see individually the agents of those weatherings. So we have three types: the mechanical, chemical, and biological weathering. So we'll see one by one. So let's go to the definition of the weathering. So weathering is actually the breakdown or dissolving of rocks, mineral into smaller pieces. So you see the rocks which are being at the surface of Earth or inside of Earth. So actually our surface is made of the different rocks. So when these rocks are being broken down, are being being taken into smaller pieces, they are being, this definition or this process is called the weathering. So when the rocks are being broken down, are being dissolved into smaller pieces, this process is called the weathering. Now, weathering is a long-term process. It's been continuous process. It's been happening every time on the surface of Earth. Before going to the definition, I'll let you know that there are the two factors or two processes or two forces which are being actively involved in the shaping and reshaping of the Earth. One are the forces which are at outside the surface of Earth, and another are the internal and subsurface forces. So the forces which are working outside at the top of Earth, they are being called exogenic forces, and the forces which are being running are being active inside Earth, they are being called endogenic forces. They are quite different from each other, but they are working. They are being so actively involved parallelly. You know, so the what I say, the forces which are been working outside and the inside, they are been working parallelly. They are working at the same time. So because of these, you know, both what I say, uh, factors, are, you know, the processes, uh, the change on the surface of Earth is been occurring. You know, so whether it's change that is inside and the outside. So uh, weathering is the breaking down of rocks when the rocks are being you know, being converted into more and more smaller pieces. So weathering occurs at near the surface Earth and brings changes to the landscape which influence surface and subsurface topography landform. So when the rocks are being break down, definitely the shape of Earth being changed. So the weathering affect and have impact or the influence at the landscape or the topography of Earth's surface. So rainwater, extreme temperature, and biological activity are key factor agents of weathering. So we'll discuss these agents, you know, separately one by one. But the main agents of the change or breaking down of this of the rocks are the temperature, extreme temperature, rainwater, and biological activity. So when the uh, due to the weathering, the rocks texture and size and forms are being changed, are being reduced, are being modified. So weathering is the first step in soil formation. If you are being, you know, the student of agriculture or farming or, you know, soil, uh, you must know that the first step in the soil formation is the weathering. So when any rock which start to dissolve or disintegrate or break down, this is the first step of making of the soil. So first step, first stage of soil formation is the weathering. It does not involve the removal of rock material. So removal, we are not been concerned in the removal. When the rocks have been disintegrated and removed to another place, we are not concerned. That process called the erosion. Now we have been talking the types of weathering. So basically there are three types of weathering. We have a mechanical weathering, we have a chemical weathering, and we have a biological weathering. So all these three weathering, physical, chemical, biological, they have a different agents. So like if you talk about, you know, the weathering which is called the physical, mechanical, we have exfoliation, frost wedging, salt wedging, temperature changes, and abrasion. So we'll discuss one by one, don't worry about this. And chemical weathering, we have a decompose, we have dissolve, alter, or weaken the rocks through the chemical process from the residual material. So let's go one by one these. Now we start from the mechanical weathering, or an alternative that's called the physical weathering. The more popular is the physical weathering. So what happens in physical weathering or the mechanical weathering? It is also called physical. It is physical disintegration or the reduction in the size of rocks without changing its chemical composition. So what happens here in a mechanical or physical weathering? The change occurs, but that change doesn't nothing have to do with its chemical or biological change. It has, though its size and texture has been changed or been reduced, but its chemical composition not being changed here. So in physical weathering, only its physical aspect, or, you know, the physical outlook is being changed here. So exfoliation, frost wedging, salt wedging, temperature changes, and abrasion are the major agents or the factors of which are involved in the mechanical or physical weathering. Let's go to exfoliation. So exfoliation, what happens? So exfoliation is the mechanical weathering process whereby pressure in a rock is released along parallel alignment near the surface of the rock. So what happens here in exfoliation? The outer layer of rocks being removed because the pressure has been increased inside, because of you can say due to the, you know, temperature pressure changes, due to any factor. So the upper layer upper layer of rocks been removed because of the change in the, so the underlying rock layers are exposed, there is a less pressure on them and they expand. This causes the rigid layers to crack and section to slide off, similar to the peeling of outer skin layer after sunburn. The expanding layer often form a dome-like hill and a round boulder. So what happens, as I told you before, the outer layer has been removed because of the, you can say, maybe the changes in the temperature or other climatic, agents. So the upper layer has been weakened, so it removed. It's similar like the onion, where you just remove off the upper layer. So the rocks take the shape of like a dome. You have a dome. So hills are rounded boulders. A boulder is a type of the rock, also the bigger rocks. So when they take the shape of rounded round one, circular. So this form of rocks, this form of activity happens in the weathering, and this process called exfoliation. Exfoliation means when the rocks removing of its upper layer. So you can see here, this one, this is the picture, where the upper layer is being removed, and this is also a dome shape. Look at the upper layer or outer layer is being removed, is going down. So like it's a Yosemite National Park is an exceptional example of exfoliation dome. So this especially Yosemite National Park, it's been famous for such type of physical structures. Exfoliation domes are best developed in granite rocks. So the rocks which have a granite, granitic minerals, so this type of weathering happens mostly there. Uh, Another, the mechanical weathering is a frost wedging. So in frost wedging, what happens here? In frost wedging is a mechanical weathering process caused by the freeze of thawing action of water that is trapped between cracks in the rock. So, once the rocks exposed to the environment, so there are certain cracks inside them. It can be because of any factor there. So they have cracks in there. So when the water is falling on them, or those cracks are filled with the water, so what happens due to the freezing and thawing action? So what happens once that water start to freeze, then melt, freezing, melting. Due to the changes in this process, freezing and melting, the volume of water or that snow has been increased, due to the change. So what happens is start to crack in the rock. So when the water freeze, it expands and applies pressure to the surrounding rocks, forcing the rock to accommodate the expansion of the ice. So what happens when that water start to freeze, it expands its volume, its size. So it creates pressure inside in the cracks, so cracks start to expand. The specific volume of water increased 9% upon freezing, producing state that is greater than the tensile strength all common. If you have a water which start to freeze, its volume increased by 9%. This also been high quantity in terms of volume. So what happens? This process gradually weakens, cracks, and breaks the rock through repeated freezing and thawing. So once the water being going down, it freeze. It start to expand the sides or the cracks in the rock. So certain type of, you see that these type of rocks being here, they take this type of shape. So this process is called the frost wedging. So again, the changes are being occurring due to the weathering, mechanical weathering. Temperature changes. Temperature is a very, very important key, I'll say, agent of weathering. So changes in the temperature. So whenever it depends on which conditions you are. The weathering is more active when there is a harsh climate, harsh climatic condition. Either there is a high rainfall, torrential rainfall, or there is a high temperature, or maybe low temperature. So wherever there is a harsh climate, weathering start to quicken its process. or speed up. So the daily or seasonal temperature changes affect certain minerals and destiny to mechanical weathering. You know, temperature is being changed even in any season, whether you are in summer or in the temperature. So if the temperature at the daytime is changed, and also at the nighttime change. So there's always fluctuation, variation in the temperature. So that variation also have an influence on the rocks which are being exposed there. So you know, at the daytime temperature is higher, at the nighttime temperature is lower. So that repeated, you know, changes in temperature also create a weathering process or being. So warmer temperature may cause some mineral to expand and cooler temperature may cause to contract. So similar like somewhere where the mineral has been expanding or been increasing and somewhere it's been to contract or been jana. So this gradual expansion and contraction of mineral gains weakens the rocks, causing to break apart in similar fingers. So I told you the similar process where it start to contract or, you know, weaken the rocks first. For rocks first, then start to breaking down the rocks. But it depends. Weathering is a lengthy process. It doesn't happen in a quick time, you know, because there are different agents. They have been working parallelly. Like you have a water, you have a air, you have a temperature. So these have been working differently at a different parallelly at the same time. So it depends on which environment, whether you are in a humid condition, whether you are in dry or semi-dry condition, whether you are in temperate conditions. So it depends on that. So then comes the salt wedging. So here the salt is being involved. So rainwater has ions and salt dissolve inside. So when water dries up, it leaves salt crystal behind. These crystals begin to grow slowly and creates waves and cracks in the rock. So what happens here? The water contains the salt. So when even the waters go have left down or have left that area or passed out that area, even after touching or being part of the rocks, you know, but it leaves the salt behind. So when the salt has been left at the rocks, these create cracks or fissures or being, you know, wedges on the rock. So this process, when the salt creates cracks or fissures or wedges in the rocks, is called the salt wedging. So salt wedging is the most common in the dry climate such as desert. So mostly it happens where there is a high temperature, high evaporation, and dry climate. So you can see here, to look at these cracks are being created by the salt which is being left by the water. So you can. Then we have in a mechanical weathering, we have an abrasion. Abrasion occurs when rocks collide against each other while they are transported by water, glacier ice, wind, or gravitational force. So when the what is the rocks, they are being, you know, transporting with the water, you know, because if the volume of water being high and there is a rocks inside in the water, so they are being traveling with the water or with the wind or with the ice. So when in that process of traveling, once they are been moving, they collide each other. वो आपस में उनका टकराव होता है. तो because of that collision they break down, उनके छोटे छोटे ज़रात हो जाते हैं. So we call this process abrasion. जब वो आपस में लगते हैं, टकराते हैं, ठीक है ना. So during abrasion, rocks may also weather the bedrock surface. They are coming into the contact with, as well as breaking into smaller particles and eventually individual grains. Not only they collide each other, but they also been colliding with the bottom. So once they are being moving or rolling in the water, been transported in the water, so what happens, they also been colliding or touching the bottom of that river or whatever, what we call the stream, whatever. So they also been distracting or dissolving or disfiguring that bottom area. So this process called the abrasion. Now we are coming to the second part of weathering, second type, which is called the chemical weathering. So in a physical weathering, only the rocks were being changing without their chemical composition. So the change was a physical one. So now in chemical weathering, decompose, dissolve, alter, and weaken the rocks through chemical process to form the residual material. So here, what happens here? Either the rocks are being dissolved, alters, or weakened only in a chemical format or chemical processes in chemical composition. So only the chemical composition has been changed. So carbonation, hydrolysis, hydration, oxidation, and solution. So these are the agents of chemical weathering, or you can say process of chemical weathering. So we'll see one by one what happens in carbonation. In carbonation, carbon is the mixing of water with carbon dioxide to make carbonic acid. Carbon dioxide and rainwater are moisture in the surrounding environment. Chemical react to provide carbonic acid, a weak acid that reacts with the carbonate mineral in the rock. So what happens here? When water mixed with carbon dioxide, when water mixed with carbon dioxide, so that carbon dioxide makes the carbonic acid usse acid ban jata hai. Then that acid create fissures, cracks, or break down the rocks, so we call that the carbonation. So carbon dioxide the main agent here, where you can see the picture here, image here, you can see the locates. So in this type weathering is important in the formation of caves. So mostly the caves are being formed where the water has been going even inside the rocks, or and that water is a carbon dioxide inside in that water. So that water create fissures or the caves in the rocks. So the mineral calcite, which is common in the limestone, is particularly vulnerable to the carbonation. So mostly this type of weathering, chemical weathering, which is called the carbonation, happens in the limestone regions. Hydrolysis. So hydrolysis is a chemical reaction between H2 and OH ion in the water and the minerals in the rock. The H plus ion in the water reacts with the mineral to produce weak acid. So similar like here, where the water creates weakened acids. Chemical breakdown of substance when combined with the water. Hydro means water and suffix lax means the breakdown. So when the water is being makes the acids with mixing with other, makes the acid and create fissures or break down the rock, we call that process the weathering, chemical weathering, but it's a hydrolysis weathering. So the reaction creates new compound which tend to soften or weaken the original parent rock material. So when we have a rock material is there, it becomes so softer and the weakens due to the hydrolysis. So now we are coming to oxidation. So what happens? Even carbonation, hydrolysis, oxidation, they are also been clearly mentioning their names. In oxidation, oxygen involved, carbonation, carbon dioxide involved, and hydrolysis, water, which is acidic water, has been involved here. So another one is oxidation. Oxidation occurs when oxygen and water react with iron-rich minerals and weaken the structure of the mineral. So the minerals which are iron-rich, which have lots of iron, so water when mixed with the oxygen react with them. So during the oxidation, the mineral in the rock will change its color, taking on the rusty or reddish orange appearance. So what happens here, the rock start to change the color, mostly takes a rusty color or the reddish color. So during the oxidation, mineral in the rock will change, taking on the rusty or reddish color. So you can see easily the color of the rocks being changed. It is because when that rock is rich in iron, and when the water is reacting with the oxygen. So we call that the oxidation process. Another one is a solution. So solution occurs when mineral in rock dissolve directly with water. So what happens? Water directly dissolve the rain, dissolve the rock dissolve directly into the water. So here the water is the direct agent which has been dissolving the rocks and create or weaken or dissolving that rock and break down that. So solution most commonly occurs a rock containing carbonates such as limestone, but may also affect rocks with a large amount of halite on the rock style. So you can see here, look at what happens. It creates the fissure or the ditch here where the rocks has dissolved the area, or where the water has dissolved the area and is go down. So mostly solution where you have a plenty of water, or you can say in a humid condition, very extreme condition, or the condition which are being very cold one in a snow or ice capped area. So that was all about the chemical reaction, chemical weathering. Now we are coming to the biological weathering. So physical weathering, then chemical weathering. Now we have a biological weathering. So in a physical weathering, what had happened in physical weathering? On the physical structure was changed. There's no change in the chemical composition. In a chemical weathering, the chemical composition of the rocks will change and start to break down. In biological weathering here, living organisms are being involved. They are the agents of changing to bring the change in the rock. So what happens in biological weathering is this disintegration or decaying of rock mineral caused by chemical physical agents of organisms. So when the organisms, they are been doing both physical and the chemical work, and they start to break down or decaying the rocks. So what are those? So organic activity from lichen and algae, you might have heard about or seen the algae lichens. So they are being wherever they are being active are in there, they start to break down the rocks. So rock disintegrate by plant growth. Once I'll go one by one. Burrowing and tunneling organisms. So the animals which are being burrowing or digging the rocks, they also been involved in biological weathering. Then secretion of acids, where when they are throwing away their urine or secretion materials, so they also been breaking down the rocks. So in organism activity, some minerals may burrow or tunnel into rocks or crack into the rocks and cause the rock to break down and disintegrate. So there are certain animals which directly go inside or create way or dig or tunnel into the rocks. So in this also way, they are start creating the weathering on that rock. So in this case, the rocks are being weathered, are being dissolved, or being disintegrated. So when they are being burrowing, they are, जब उनको कुरेदते हैं तो उससे क्या होता है कि वो रॉक टूट जाता है. तो small animals such as worms, other insects often contribute to this form the biological weathering. Similarly, you can take example of dog, or you can say the rabbit, or squirrel, or you can say snake, or the worms. They go inside the lane and make their homes, or go in or hide there. So because of their activity, they weather the rocks. So some organisms such as snails, barnacles, limpets attach to themselves a rock and secrete acid that chemical dissolve the rock surface. So some rocks which go inside are at the rocks, they secrete, they leave the urine. So that urine also been acidic. So when the urine has been falling on the rocks, it create cracks or the fissure on that rocks, or being dissolved that rocks. So plant roots. The most common form of biological weathering is when plant roots penetrate into the cracks and creeps of rocks and cause the rocks to split or to break into smaller particles through mechanical weathering. So what happens, every plant it goes, get the height or being grown, its roots are going down and down into the depth. So similar, once their roots going down, those roots, because roots has to go inside, they create the way, they create the cracks and fissures inside the earth. So because of the growth of the roots, when they go go down inside the earth, in this way they disintegrate the rocks, they break down the rocks. So there are lots of examples. You can say everywhere you find the trees, certainly their roots are being down. So the rocks inside, from even inside in the beneath the surface of earth, they create the fresh. But when the rocks are being exposed the surface of earth, जब वो जमीन के ऊपर होता है, you can see the example of here. Look at here. Even the roots which are being inside are being going down. This is the trunk of the tree, but it's still they have disintegrated. How the even look at the texture or the size of the rock, but still it had created the fissures, disintegrate their rock. So how the roots are being powered. So in this way, even so sometimes you might have seen on the buildings, on the walls, the trees. So but their roots are inside. So they are being there, they are alive there, and also been getting the nutrients inside, but still they create cracks or fissure in the rock. So again so this one, so burrowing animal or the lichens and algae, you think these type of the plants are also been, when they are being on any rocks, they slowly and gradually once they, because of their presence, what they do, they create fissures or cracks or disintegrate or break down the rock. So as I told you, secretion also been important when they are being urinating and the burrowing in tunnels of animals. So lichen algae, this one, the biochemical weathering process, leaching minerals from the rock causing it to break down, the weakens and break down. The decaying of plant minerals materials can also be produced acidic compound which dissolve the, it's also the same process. You can see here, these are the algae and lichens. Look at, they are being at the surface of the rocks, upper layer of the rock, but they look at how they are being disintegrating or breaking down the upper layer of the rock. So in this way, they are being uh, create fissures, or being loosen or weakening the rocks. So they are being the agents of biological weathering. So uh, generally, weathering rates will not only vary depending on the type of weathering process. So once you have a weathering, it depends what type of weathering is, whether it's a chemical weathering, physical weathering, or biological weathering. So rate of weathering, or say speed of weathering, depends on what type of weathering is that, whether it is a mechanical, chemical, biological, but they will also vary depending on the rock material that is being weathered. So this is also a fact. Not all rocks are being weathered easily, or in the same situation with the same agent. So it depends on the type of rock, whether the rocks are harder one or softer one, or what type of minerals are being inside the rock. So it depends on, first, what type of weathering do you have, and what are the climatic condition is there, means whether there's a harsh climate or temperate climate. So where there, as I told you, where there is a harsh climate or the extreme climates, whether the high temperature, high rainfall, or high evaporation, the weathering process will be so quick, it will speed up. And also it depends on the texture of the rocks. So once the rocks are being, it depends on the nature of the rocks, if they are being softer, harder, porous, non-porous, it depends on that, and what type of minerals inside in those rocks. So these are the conditions which determine the weathering process, the type of weathering, the climatic condition, and the type or the texture of the rock. So the difference in rates of weathering due to different type of rocks, texture, other characters refer to that differential weathering. Climate can also, as I told you, climate can also be a very important factor here, which speed up the weathering process. So if you have a rocks, for example, the limestone weather quickly in the climates of dry climate. So if the rocks having a minerals of limestone, abundance in a limestone, it quickens the process of weathering. And if you have a dry climate, it will also be quickening the process of weathering. So it was all about weathering. I hope you understand, because it was very important. So if we want to understand some geological processes, or you can say the land features, which we are being observing and seeing by our own eyes on the surface of Earth. So the weathering is a very critical and important process which shape and reshape our Earth surface. So if you have liked my lecture, so kindly please like, share, and subscribe my channel for more videos. So till then, take care of yourself. See you very soon with another video. Thank you.